Yes, so welcome everyone. Thank you for joining in for today's session on successfully handling risk as a freelancer in our Mertus expert panel. I'm Justus Dase. I'm the founder and CEO of Mertus. We are an IT contracting company located in the north of Germany in Hamburg. And yeah, I will be leading you through the Mertus expert panel today. Let me jump straight in. So many people at some stage in their career think about actually changing their career path to freelancing. A lot of employees are in a situation where they think it might not be their ultimate goal in life to work for their employer for the rest of their life. So entering the freelancing world is for many people a choice to actually enter the B2B world and offer their services on the market. Let it be in form of project management, consulting, development, coaching, or something else. So as a freelancer, it's probably one of the easiest ways to start off your own business in form of a one-man or a one-woman show. And especially it represents the idea of having particularly flexible a flexible environment for your work. So both in terms of the location and the time, but also your contractual partners. So the challenges and the tasks that you will be working on, that flexibility is what most freelancers state as the biggest advantage of working as a freelancer. But however, of course, there's a flip side to the coin as well. So by entering the B2B world, you are also responsible for gaining the revenue for your business, actually having handling the sales and the sales pipeline, accounting, taxes, insurance, and all other risks that might be associated with your business. So today, these risks are exactly what we want to focus on, and we will discuss, or we will attempt to identify areas of risks, and also, of course, talk about how to actually successfully handle those risks. So there is, of course, not one to solve them all approach. Maybe that's just a spoiler in advance. A lot of risks are always associated, especially to the individual areas of your activity. So we will not be able to cover all of those, but we will do our best to touch on as many risks as possible. So this brings me now to welcoming our guest again on today's Mertus expert panel. Hello, Sandra Löhning. Thank you very much for joining in today and taking the time.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me, Justus. Thanks.
Yeah, let me just briefly introduce you. So you're an account manager and partner manager at Exali. Exali is a digital insurance brokerage company, also from Germany, and you're specialized on the freelancing world, one can say.
Yes.
So you're specialized on consulting or providing insurance and consulting freelancers on insurance covers. Especially with a focus on the marketing, engineering, IT areas, right?
That's correct, yes.
So in your everyday working life, you're confronted with freelancers who are either asking you on how to actually cover certain risks of their activity, or alternatively, some situations where it goes wrong, so risks materialize, and freelancers reach out trying to figure out a way on how to actually solve those tricky situations. So who better to ask than you, Sandra, when it comes to successfully handling risks as a freelancer?
Oh, thank you. I'm delighted. That was an introduction, wasn't it? Thanks. Yeah, I'll do my very best and give you some insights in our world here, as we at Exali also handle all the claims ourselves. We have some insights, and I will give you some information about it. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Also, again, welcome to everybody who has joined in today. I would like to introduce, or I would like to invite you to actually use the chat function on YouTube as well to join in the discussion, and you can also ask some questions. We will try to include those questions in our event. So let's do an interactive version of our Mertus expert panel, and please feel invited to join in. And then Sandra, let's jump in. So let's focus first on the areas of risk. As a freelancer, what do you think are the most relevant areas of risk of which I should be aware?
Okay, so the most relevant risks aren't so specific, but I think I brought along the three most relevant ones. First of all, the lack of assignments. So if you don't create enough revenue to live off, This is, of course, a huge risk. As a freelancer, you are dependent on the economic situation and providing enough orders for you, okay? And it is often not possible to reliably calculate how many orders you will receive. So this is a great area of risk. And we have, let's take the Corona crisis as a prime example, of how unpredictable the economic situation is. So that's one risk area. The second one,
sorry, just let me just jump in. I think exactly that area of risk is something people feel confronted with, especially now at the moment as well, because the economic situation is changing, interest rates are changing, so the investment environment has changed dramatically. So yeah, definitely, I would agree, a very relevant area of risk.
Yeah, okay. And the next one, it's a bit related to the first one, if your customers don't pay. So economic conditions not only influence whether you receive orders at all, but also whether your customers are able to pay you. And so it is very important to keep a regular eye on incoming payments, sending payment reminders, for example, and you can also handle this risk well, I'd say, but we'll talk about this later, about the specific tasks here.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just focus on pointing out to some areas first.
Just naming, okay. And the third and very important area of risk is cases of health problems or damage. So with self-employment, your life situation automatically changes and drastically changes, I'd say. And this should also be taken into account when it comes to your insurances. As a freelancer, you are automatically a lone fighter. You must insure yourself against the risks that now exist or have increased. If you are no longer able to perform your work as a freelancer, this usually means that your entire income will disappear. So if you get sick, for example, and also there can be claims for damages when a professional error occurs, or breach of an NDA or a non-compete clause. The risk is very high that you will be liable with your private assets in the event of a claim, and then might end up in financial distress. So these are the three, I think, very, very important areas we should name and talk about.
Yeah, especially because they're so different to the usual employer-employee situations. You usually have, well, of course, it all depends on the legislative framework of the country in which you're situated. But if you're sick, you get some kind of compensation. You have some claims for vacation that is paid. All these aspects don't exist in the freelancing world. So they're exactly the flip to the coin that we've mentioned regarding flexibility and freedom and all those choices that you have. But of course, you have to keep more things in mind. But you mentioned some of the risks, and I think there are especially a lot of risks that are really particular or dependent on the individual contract that you have signed as well, of course. So it really depends on the liabilities and responsibilities defined in those contracts. That's something that has to be checked individually. But maybe apart from that, are there any other potential risks that are maybe not so much related to contracts or the project sphere itself?
Yeah, for example, let's think about cyber attacks. Okay, freelancers work for various and often very large clients, and are therefore an interesting access route for to corporations for cyber criminals. But we have made the experience that freelancers are often mostly worried about professional mistakes or claims for damages, and they do not see themselves as a target of cyber attacks, but it is indeed a threat and an area of risk you should be aware of. And of course, you should take appropriate precautions for cyber attacks. Check your own IT security, upgrade it if necessary. You can also take out cyber insurance, for example. So this is an area you can handle well. What is often not so present, I think, for a lot of freelancers is work planning and time management is also.
What do you mean? In what context?
Yeah, well, in contrast to permanent job, as a freelancer, you are on your own, okay? So how you structure your projects in terms of time, or allocate your work capacity, or deal with bottlenecks, this is entirely up to you. And if you don't do this properly, if you aren't experienced, if you don't use, for example, time management tools, a lot can go wrong. So you should be aware that you are solely responsible for your work planning and time management. For example,
I think this actually also relates to the first risk that you mentioned. So actually handling your sales pipeline. So it's at some point it might be easy to get a contract, and then it might appear really attractive to take multiple contracts, and maybe just overestimating your ability regarding the workload that you're able to perform, and having the risk basically of then either making mistakes or not being able to perform on all the contracts, and that will have a lot of follow-up problems.
Yes. And you should be aware of this, of course, and just take precautions, because we also had double bookings, freelancers that weren't aware of, for example, the amount of time the traveling took in, and they couldn't cover one project properly anymore. And therefore, couldn't fulfill their duties anymore with the second project. So this is also a risk. But there are a lot of tools, maybe some, or if you have a wonderful network, a strong network, or a competent project agency, can also support you here and give advice and share best practices also.
Yeah, I think that's also the part I'll talk about, or I have some questions regarding the optimization options there for later. Maybe just now let's stick to the point of actually identifying the risks or areas of risks, because I think this is often the most crucial point. People just tend to start off doing things, which is probably the nature of a freelance. I just want to do things, want to get stuff done, I want to create things. I do not want to constrain myself just by thinking about risks and probabilities and contractual things and all these aspects. I want to create something new, and that's a positive thing. But at the same time, identifying the risk is also really crucial. And this is a step that has to be improved for many people. So maybe just to illustrate a few risks and of course, we cannot cover all potential areas or name examples for risks. But maybe you can just name one or two from your experience at Exali.
Okay. You mean you're referring to real life claims, or just
some real life cases, maybe where something went wrong,
where something did go
and
wrong.
They reached out to cover it, maybe.
Okay, we have, as we handle our claims, or the claims of our policyholders ourselves, of course we have insights here, and I've prepared two Exali claims to tell you today. The first I want to talk about is, and I think this should feel familiar to a lot of freelancers out there, a violated confidentiality agreement. How could this happen? There was just too much information in the business profile. Referring to our first risk, you have to create revenue. You have to be visible in business networks. You have to show what you are able to do in your business profile. So in this case, we had some IT freelancers that worked for a defense technology company on projects involving encryption and communication technologies. So that sounds
top secret stuff.
that sounds fun. And of course, yeah, projects like this make very good references. And this is exactly what the IT freelancers thought. And that's why they listed the activities they had performed for the projects in detail in their profiles on the business platform Xing. And for those who don't know, Xing is I think it's mainly in the German-speaking areas.
DACH region is the...
It's like LinkedIn, but in Germany. Okay. Unfortunately, the descriptions, they posted there were a bit too detailed because interested parties could not only find out in detail what the freelancers were currently working on, but they also were provided with confidential company and project internals.
Mm-hmm.
So this is bad enough in itself, but especially in defense technology, we are talking about often state-owned clients that play an important role in the knowledge of who receives which technologies should not fall into the wrong hands. So the company, of course, I mean, it's understandable. Yeah, they reacted accordingly and immediately turned to the responsible project agent and demanded that the IT freelancers immediately delete all confidential information from the business profiles. And you can maybe think of what happened next. The IT freelancers had to sign additional agreements prohibiting them from publishing information about the projects. And this was why Exali was involved. The defense technology company also reserved the right to claim further damages. So
in case something went wrong,
yes,
they could resort to them. Okay.
And you know, you don't know what to expect in this case. The damages can be, I don't know, 15,000 euros or 1.5 million euros. So this is, I wouldn't sleep.
Especially because of the area in which they were working.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think interesting aspect, which also relates to this whole contractual risk thing, part of contractual risks. So as a freelancer, over time, I gather more and more NDAs and contractual obligations in all kinds of different directions, and actually keeping the overview of those. What am I actually having understood the content of the contracts and having, abiding by the rules contained in those contracts, that can be pretty difficult. The more contracts I have signed over time, let it be the NDAs or competition
non-compete clauses,
anything in that direction. So yeah, I have to keep that in mind. Interesting example. So yeah, that's something one would maybe not think of immediately.
Do you know how? Do you want to know how this one ended? I will tell you.
That's always actually the most interesting. I hope
we had a happy end.
Well.
And do you know who was the hero here in the end? It was the project agent, the project agency. They managed to keep a cool head and negotiated perfectly. Did really well with the defense company. And they could persuade them to waive this claim for damages. So everything went just fine. So that was one
situation to have somebody in your back helping you actually in such a situation. Yeah, I can imagine first moment in first second in such a situation is just panic. Okay, but maybe you have another second example for us.
Yes, and this is a very IT related and a very technical example. So I had to write it down because I'm aware that a lot of IT freelancers are with us today, and I want to give it one-to-one to you so that every technical detail is correct. So we had a medium-sized IT service provider, and he had a huge contract, okay? He had to plan and install a data backup system for his customer, and the customer was an investment consulting firm. So he should plan and install it, and also manage it during its ongoing operation. And the main task was to automatically back up all electronic data, so messages, contract data, templates, correspondence, everything. And you can imagine an investment consulting company, we're talking about money. And really important
transactions,
customers in transactions, yes. So the data volume on a daily basis was about 100 GB. So that's a lot, yeah. And the backup system had to manage this. So the IT service provider implemented the backup system that created a backup copy of the new and changed workplace data every evening. And in addition, there was a weekly copy of all data. So to ensure a smooth process, our policy holder, the IT service provider, also ensured that the backup creation was automatically checked. So it was meticulously documented and sent by email to the responsible system administrator on site. So everything went well. But after 9 months, the system reported an error. It said a daily backup could not be created. So, general, no big deal, you would say. The IT service provider took care of the matter immediately on the spot and sent a service employee to fix the defect. The employee checked and found an error in the control message system. So he fixed it and thought everything is working smoothly again, and that's fine. But, however, he did not check the quality and completeness of the backup.
Okay, so there was...
Yeah, and then happened what never happens, but in this case it did. The company had a surge damage through a thunderstorm. The probability of this is, okay, but
pretty low, but it happened. And
but
this is what happens in life, right? Something, risks materialize that one would never expect.
It's Murphy's Law, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so a surge happened, thunderstorm kicked in, and a lot of data had been destroyed. So, but the responsible person thought, no big deal. We have a wonderful backup system here installed. We'll solve the problem in the obvious way and restore the lost data via the backup system. But then he had to discover that not a single usable backup was available. So when the service, why was that? When the service employee checked the system, he did not notice that the data backup had not been working correctly for about 1 year. And there were 2 reasons for this misery. Reason 1, the investment consultancy, so the company client, had also stored data other than the intended workplace data on the hard drives without telling the IT service provider about this. And therefore, there was no longer enough space for the daily backup copies, and the system only stored useless fragments. So from the outside, it looked perfectly fine, but if you would have taken a look inside, you would have seen there are useless fragments only and not valuable data. So this was problem 1. Problem 2 was the IT service provider's employee didn't check properly. And so this whole thing could carry on until it was discovered in the end. Then. So what had to be done? The employees of the investment company were forced to manually re-enter all client and contract data we're talking about 1 year.
That's a lot of information. It took a lot of time and cost a lot of money.
Do you want to estimate how much time it was, how many hours they had to invest?
No idea.
Okay, 6,500.
Yeah, that's a significant damage. And yeah, just for a mistake that can happen, probably it wasn't really visible. Of course, there's always methods and improvements to implement to mitigate such risks. But in the end of the day, these things can probably happen to everyone, and it's just another example for a risk that can materialize.
Yeah.
And nobody is 100% safe. These people probably never thought that something like this would ever happen to them. So. Yeah, but it can happen.
It can happen, and as I see it from time to time, I experience that especially the backup claims happen quite often, I'd say, and people are not aware of the extent of damage that can happen through a faulty backup. So that's quite huge, because the 6,500 working hours were worth 175,000 euros. And that was the claim. That was a part of the claim that our policyholders, a client, made. On top of that, the company had no way of accessing important data and conducting business in the meantime. So what happened? They even lost some clients. So the investment consulting company lost an estimated 150,000 euros in turnover on top of that 175,000 euros. So we had a claim for damages totaling 325,000 euros.
Yeah, a backup issue. Yeah,
sounds
sounds really relevant, but I can imagine that this is something that happens quite often, as you mentioned. But sorry to rush a little bit, but we have so many topics we want to cover in our session, so that I kind of have to push a little bit, because we have now talked about like areas of risk and actually given examples of identifying risks. But the next question is, if I've actually identified a risk or an area of risk, next step is, how can I actually optimize my decision-making process? So is there maybe an approach for such a situation to improve my decision-making? And before we actually maybe jump in on specific examples, is there maybe like on an abstract level, some kind of model that can improve my decision-making when or after identifying a risk?
Yeah, of course. You can just, I think many IT freelancers are well acquainted with agile project management and are used to considering risks in their projects. And you can use the same tools that you maybe know from this context, of course, also it can be used for yourself. For example, a risk matrix. So this is a simplified, let's just talk about a simplified model from risk management. It's just 4 steps, okay? Step 1, risk analysis. Identify your risks, think about what could happen, like we did in the beginning, and write it down, make a list, okay? Step 2 is risk assessment, risk evaluation. In order to be able to assess your situation correctly, it is important that you carry out a risk assessment. So you think about, you evaluate on the basis of 2 criteria: extent of damage from, very low, very high, or even critical, and probability of occurrence. So could it happen to me? Is it possible? Very unlikely, or certain, okay? And if you want, you can create a matrix with an X and Y axis and have a graphical illustration. So basically, you can say that you should be prepared for all risks that have a high extent of damage and at the same time, a high probability of occurrence, okay? So I brought a risk matrix. You can illustrate it like that, okay? Everything
in the red area.
Everything in the
really
red,
have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, so high extent, high probability, or high extent, medium probability. you should go on with step 3, risk handling. How can you manage your risks? What can you do about them? And generally speaking, you can avoid risks, you can reduce risks, or you can transfer risks, like, for example, to an insurance, to a risk carrier. Or, some risks you even might have to just accept. Okay.
Just deal with it,
yeah, accept some risks. That is also possible. And step 4, risk monitoring. So if you have done all 3 steps, this is a risk monitoring is a continuous process. So please keep an eye on your risks. Changed circumstances may require an adjustment of your measures, like if you have new clients or new fields of activity, adjustments may be necessary.
So maybe, so that's like the abstract model, right? So you stated, or I think we stated 3 main areas of risk in the very beginning. So one was regarding lack of assignments, just having like the sales pipeline ready, payment default of customers, and some health issues. So if we apply this risk evaluation model just as kind of like a practice example to those 3 areas, what would be your result of conducting this risk assessment?
Okay, so
for a freelancer, of course, that's why we're all here.
Okay, so especially at the start, I mean, when we're talking about a lack of assignments, not enough revenue to live off, when you are not yet so established, the probability of occurrence, that you have from time to time a lack of assignments is quite high. And it depends on your personal circumstances. The extent of damage is also high. So I would say it's here, especially at the beginning, when you are more connected, for example, the longer you perform your activities, maybe this
more reliable your network, the lower the risk is. But of course, depending if it substitutes your income from your employer. So it's a really up to critical risk. If you don't generate any revenue, you don't have an income, and that's in the end of the day, that's what it's all about. You have to live from it.
Yeah, and the second area of risk was if your customers don't pay. So generally speaking, you can say that the payment morale has tended to go worse over time, and especially when the economy is a bit tough. At the moment, you could expect this to happen. I personally would classify the probability of occurrence in the medium range. It depends on which clients you are working with, of course. The extent of damage is medium to high, depending on whether I, as a freelancer, have many small projects, or maybe only 1 or 2 large projects per year. In the latter case, a non-paying client is a disaster. So this is an area of risk where you have to assess very individually, because it depends on who are you working for, and it depends on what kind of projects you do, and of course which fixed costs you have for your living also, right?
I think that's actually a risk that is also quite easy to mitigate. I think that's something we'll jump in later as well, but you already mentioned that, like, that's already a solution, just not having one major client that you're completely dependent on. So maybe having 1 or 2 clients, or not maybe having 1 client for multiple years, but having some backup projects that you generate multiple revenue streams of, so that you can actually mitigate that risk. But there, I think we also have to distinguish between a complete payment default. So just a client goes insolvent and there's no payment whatsoever. Then that's really the worst case. And the second, just payment morale that you mentioned. So the company or the client pays a month late or a few weeks late, but you might be dependent on receiving your money on time.
So you should assess this risk and think about how to handle it, because I would say a handling is necessary, because it's definitely here. So, and the third area of risk is health problems. So if you are too sick to go to work, so no revenue, no income, and claims for damages or damage. So in case of health problems, I think the question is not whether they occur, but when, because everyone gets sick once and is unable to work. So a good insurance policy regarding health insurance is one that covers my loss of earnings in case of illness, and that makes a lot of sense here. And same with professional liability insurance. Everyone makes a mistake once in a while, whether it's a programming error or damage to property or breach of data protection law, or as we mentioned before, breach of an NDA, violation of an NDA. So in both cases, I would say probability of occurrence is high, and the extent of damage is quite low, medium, or extremely high. It depends on your personal situation. When it comes to damages, the most claims we have, I think 80% of our claims are in the thousands of euros, not in the 10,000s, but every 20th claim by our clients, by our policyholders, is worth 6 figures.
Okay, so more than 100,000 euro. Okay, that's that's so every 20th. It's doesn't seem a lot, but if you're the one involved, then it can be really critical, especially as a freelancer, depending, of course, on the structure legally that you've chosen. If you have like a limited liability company or not, it will be your personal assets that will be involved in this claim process, and that will not only have an effect on your company life, but also on your personal life. So, that should be, or in my opinion, is something that's really up there on the risk of evaluation model, let's say. But I think it's what we should take from these thoughts is, so we have the abstract models, so the extent of damages, so basically the numbers behind a potential claim, and the probability of such a risk actually materializing. Those are the abstract factors. And the step every freelancer should take after identifying a risk or an area of risk is just to apply such a model, just in order to make deliberate decisions. So just have consciousness of the decisions you take, so that you actually take risks with consciously, rather than just running into risks without even having identified or evaluated them beforehand. I think that's maybe the learning one should take from these examples and discussion.
Not thinking about risks and not doing anything is the worst choice you can make.
I think so. We discussed about identifying risk, evaluating a risk, and of course it's extremely versatile, the different areas of risk and how to actually evaluate them, and then making a business decision. It's not just a numbers game. It can be extremely difficult on how to actually name the risk and evaluate the probability and estimate the amount. So it sounds easy what we are trying to try to explain here on the abstract level, but in real life it can be extremely difficult. But we cannot really solve that in this discussion here. So maybe we should focus again on what you mentioned also before, avoiding, preventing, transferring, and accepting the risk. So actually the risk handling models, let's say, or different pillars of then actually handling a risk. So there might be certain risks you already mentioned that you just have to accept. So you already explained. So there is apparently some risks where it doesn't make sense to get any insurance cover, or where I cannot really interfere with anything I can influence personally. I just have to cope with it. I have to be aware of the risk, but it's still the B2B world. So there's some risks that cannot be erased completely, and I will just have to live with them.
Yes, but you can do a lot about the mentioned risks. I mean, you can handle them
Yeah, so let's maybe jump in on the how to actually avoid, reduce, and transfer rather than accepting, because that's I think the fallback option.
Okay, so let's start with the first one, the lack of assignments. Okay, what you can do with this area of risk is prevent and reduce. Yeah, so reduce the likelihood that the risk will occur. So how can you do that? Build reliable revenue streams and network a lot. Be visible. Maybe not like the guys in our same example, but yeah, be visible. Maintain your LinkedIn profile and your website. Yeah, show references. Maintain good relationships with project agencies, like Mertus, for example. Or this has proven to be quite efficient. Become a member of a professional association and regional business clubs.
Okay.
This is so you.
I think that, sorry to interrupt, I think that's actually one thing, especially now after COVID, people should get back to actually networking in real life again. So of course, this is a digital meeting because we're trying to reach a broad audience that is working remotely all across Europe, but networking is still something that's really that happens on a personal level. So going to your regional business associations, I think really interesting and something we have to push ourselves to actually do it again after this long pause of COVID. Yeah,
it's more comfortable to stay behind the screen and just wait for what is coming, but it's a good idea to engage in regional business clubs. This is what we experience here in our area. That's one good strategy. So what you also can do about lack of engagements or assignments is that you reduce your personal extent of damage. Yeah, if you have low fixed costs, especially in the beginning, something like office rent, or you're leasing a nice vehicle, nice BMW. That's maybe not such a brilliant idea, I'd say. Just keep the fixed costs low in the beginning. This might be a good strategy to reduce your personal extent of damage when sometimes times are dry and you don't have enough revenue. So when it comes to non-paying customers, you can handle this risk very well with preventing, reducing, and transferring. So work with reliable and solvent partners. This will reduce the risk effectively. And you can also carry out a credit check on potential partners, especially when it comes to large assignments that last several months or longer. It's also easy to do online and build up.
There's multiple tools. I think there's different for every different country, but you can actually get like a credit check from your business partners. Yes.
Yeah, and I'd recommend to do so, especially for larger projects. That's also you can transfer these risks in this area. Payment defaults due to a withdrawal from the contract, for example, because you have caused damage and the client isn't satisfied with your work. This can even be insured, and this would be then a risk transfer to a risk carrier, the insurer. An easy one is Sorry
to interrupt you. In terms of the payment morale, I think I would like to also mention something that also relates to avoiding and preventing or reducing the risk. It starts in negotiating the contract payment. So the payment deadlines. So you really should be aware of what's written there and what that means for your revenue streams and your everyday life. Because some clients will have 14 days or 30 days, and that's completely fine. That's normal. But some clients might have 90 days or 120 days or something. So you will be actually working the month in advance anyway, and then usually you'd wait for another month until you receive your money. But if you wait for 3 months or 4 months, then it's basically half a year after you performed the first hour of work before you actually receive money for it. So that's something you should be really, really aware of, and you should be able to solve the gap in between with some funds you have available or other project revenue streams. So that's I think that's a major aspect. Of course, there's also solutions for that. So having like like a project agency that will cover the period, the payment period. So you might have a different payment period offered by your project agency, and the agency takes the risk of the payment default of the client, of the end clients. Solvent, or the solvency risk basically, or you can actually sell your claims and receive your money in advance. So this doesn't relate to agencies, of course, but it's like factoring solutions. So there's different ones, but they all cost money. So that's not a really the first go-to option, I would say. But it's a
possibility.
It's a possibility, yes, exactly.
Sufficient handling. I'd agree.
Yeah, so that was the second one.
We have
the payment. So maybe let's also talk about the health or the damage topic again.
You can, cases of health problems or damage, I mean, of course, you can go with reducing there and
do sports.
Just maintain a healthy lifestyle and reduce the risk of making a professional mistake by working very carefully, or using the 4 I's principle, but this won't be possible everywhere. The best and simplest method for these risks is just to transfer the risk to a risk carrier and insurance company. So check your existing insurances, health insurance, accident insurance, upgrade or adjust them if necessary, and take out a professional indemnity insurance.
But Sandra, I think this always sounds so easy, just saying it like that, just check your insurance. I think for many people, insurance is really a black box. So, and I would really like to focus again on this transferring risk, because there's so many different offers and there's all kinds of different possibilities, and you can probably invest all your revenue stream in some form of insurance at some point. But in your opinion, what is really realistic? What is necessary, and what is maybe a good option, and what can I just avoid? What is not really necessary, or what is not insurable even? That might be also questions that might be interesting for the freelancers who joined in today.
Okay, I'd say health insurance is crucial, and just talk to an insurer you know well and who advises you well. Okay, that's
okay. Health insurance #1,
that's #1.
Not to discuss about.
And don't discuss about health insurance, because that's crucial. Okay, that's #1. #2 is the professional indemnity insurance. If you have questions, you can, at Exali, for example, you can call anytime, and we will advise you and talk with you about your individual specific risks. So in general, what is easily insurable is third-party damage. So you as a freelancer are almost always legally or contractually liable for damage you cause. And I generally recommend that everyone has insurance against third-party damage.
So something like the 2 examples you mentioned in the beginning with the backup error, for example, some mistake you make, of course, not intentionally, but it just happens, and those are the third-party damages that you can cover. Actually, just to add this, maybe there's a lot of contracts we see with our clients that actually obligate us or the freelancers working in the projects to have or to provide proof of some of the existence of an insurance policy that covers exactly those damages. So you might even be contractually obligated to have it. And even aside from those contractual obligation to obtain such insurance, it is still a reasonable thing to do just to cover your risks.
Yes, I would cover them, because you have, as a freelancer, you have to expect sometimes high claims for compensation from customers, principals, in case you make a mistake or a mishap. So I would just insure it and transfer this risk over. You know, apart from warnings due to infringements of rights, I mean, that can range from a few hundred to several thousand euros. The average amount of damage claimed is around 25,000 euros for damages in the IT environment. So, and as I said before, every 20th claim is in the six-figure euro range. So
it's worth as just inquiring maybe and just figuring out how much such an insurance policy might cost, and then deciding for oneself if it makes sense to obtain such an insurance.
Yeah, you can just check online. Visit, for example, exali.com. You can do a quick configuration, and you see within 30 seconds the premium. Okay, it's the range is 200, 300, 400 euros per year, and you are insured.
So what else? Maybe how about cyber risk? I think we mentioned in the beginning. So I think it's something that is really present in the media as well. There's a lot of cyber attacks, and who is or most likely hackers will be choosing an easy gateway, or apparently easy gateway, to approach major corporations and get into their systems. And freelancers can be a potential gateway. So cyber risk is, I think, really relevant and something our clients are discussing more and more. So how about transferring risk regarding that?
This would, at Exali, would already be included in the professional indemnity insurance. So third-party cyber damage. This means, for example, if through your laptop, your client gets infected, or the system of your client gets infected with some malware, this would already be covered with the Exali professional indemnity insurance. But of course, it makes sense to transfer this risk. And if you do not want to take out professional indemnity insurance, there are policies available for cyber insurances, and you can specifically insure this risk too. One for third-party damages. This means if you infect accidentally your client's system with a malware, and also there is a first-party cyber insurance where you can insure the costs related to the restoration or repair of your own IT systems, or costs for external computer forensic experts or specialized lawyers, for example, when something happens to your own IT infrastructure. So these insurances make sense if you would have high costs in the event of a cyber attack. And if you own expensive hardware or software, or if you cannot continue with your project in case of a cyber attack, I would also take out a first-party cyber insurance. Okay.
And I think the first aspect, or one of the first aspects you mentioned relating to transferring risk, you should make sure that you get really reliable help in the context of insurance, because there's a lot of offers and a lot of stuff you don't really need probably, and the details are often a little bit hidden in the smaller text. So just get somebody who really who can really help you and inform you and consult you in terms of really necessary and helpful insurance, and also on what is just unnecessary and a waste of money, basically. And you have to find your right partner. We from our side can recommend Exali as trustworthy partners in that context. But you have to decide for yourself, and there's a lot of offers out there. Exactly. I think that brings me, also looking at the clock, brings me to my final question, Sandra, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I would like to summarize today's event. So what are your 3 main suggestions if it comes to successfully handling risk as a freelancer?
I would like to finish now with a positive attitude, because we talked so much about claims and problems. So first of all, be aware of your risks and manage them. Do something about them. The second takeaway is take a good look at who you are working with. Good partners and a strong network will provide you with valuable contacts, with important information, and even business opportunities, of course. Yeah. And the third one, yeah, sometimes just the whole is so that all the tasks and responsibilities and risks, it can seem so overwhelming. So this reminds me of a joke my boss used to make when I was complaining about project management and being overwhelmed and just too much. So yeah, Justus, how do you eat an elephant?
Eat an elephant, the animal, you mean?
Yes, and the animal. How do you eat an elephant?
I don't know. I think there's just stupid answers I could give to that question. I don't want to make a fool of myself.
Okay. Hey, my boss told me. It's very simple. How you eat an elephant, one slice after another. So just break the whole big fat thing down into lots of little pieces and take care of your little risk pieces one by one. This is how you build a healthy freelance business, and don't be intimidated by the big whole one. Yeah, just stay positive.
Exactly. And I think that's, you mentioned we were talking a lot about risk, but we should never, of course, forget the opportunity related to freelancing and all the positive sides, and just managing the risk well, and then things will go well in the end. And one thing I would like to add to the second aspect you mentioned, building a reliable network, of course, also listen to your gut feeling. Just work with people that you also enjoy working with, or that you have a positive gut feeling about working with, because if you already, like in the first interview or first discussions about project, have some kind of like warning signals, might be just a gut feeling. Often those gut feelings are worth listening to and following them. Often it turns out in the end, one should have listened to it from the very beginning. And yeah, so this maybe just as my final comment, it's not just all about rules. Sometimes it's also just about gut. It's about the gut feeling. So thank you, Sandra. Thank you very much for taking time today and answering all those questions and giving us these insights. It was really a pleasure having us on our Mertus expert panel today on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And of course, thank you to all those who joined in for the session today. If you're looking for further information on insurance policies and offers, I will include some further links in the show notes below. Of course, if you're searching for freelancing projects, feel free to reach out to us from the Mertus team. We will be happy to give you further information and discuss with you on potential opportunities. And if you liked the video, please leave a like here for us today as well. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. We will be producing more and more content on regarding tech and freelance topics. And of course, we are really active on LinkedIn as well. So if you're looking for further updates, projects and whatnot, you can find it on our Mertus LinkedIn page. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.
Hey, Justus. Thank you.